Hi,
everyone.
folks. How are you doing today?
Hey, Josh. How's it going?
I'm doing great. Doing great.
Calling in Hawaii, is it?
I am calling from Hawaii. That's not actually the view out the window. That's just the view in the conference room. But yeah, it's still a little early in the day for sunset.
Yeah. It's 10:30.
So yeah, it's great to be here. I'm Josh Montgomery. I'm the founder of Mycroft. Mycroft is the open source alternative to technologies like Alexa and Siri and Google Assistant. We've got a really big open source community around the world that's using the technology in everything from children's toys to automobiles, recently in healthcare. And Mycroft provides brands and companies an opportunity to deploy a natural voice experience in their products or in their facilities without being beholden to the big tech companies and being forced to share their data and in some cases to use an interaction that's very unnatural. Asking a voice assistant to connect me, let's use Procter & Gamble as an example, since you were just mentioning it, saying, voice assistant, activate the Procter & Gamble toothpaste skill and tell me, how many times I've brushed my teeth in the last month is a very unnatural interaction. What Mycroft's helping folks to do is to build their own brands. So, you might have a voice assistant named Procter and say, hey Procter, I'm almost out of toothpaste. Can you go ahead and reorder? And, away it goes.
Yeah, that's really cool. And one of the, maybe slightly tangential, but like the close comparison that I think of is like Intel's kind of three-tone jingle, right? Like slightly in the sonic asset kind of category, but like everyone remembers that. Right? Intel, once you hear the three notes, it's them. How do you think about like helping a brand build out something similar, whether more so than voice space, but along the lines of that?
Sure. Right now, the way that brands are working in voice technology, they're almost like apps in the App Store, only they're not allowed to build any real branded assets as part of that. So you could think of it as an equivalent to building an app for the Android store, but being stuck with Google's branding all over your app, right? Being unable to put your own brand on it and to define your own interaction. And that's really where we are with voice. The big tech platforms have really reserved the branding and the identity of those voice assistants to themselves, and they've really added the brands as kind of an also ran third-party application. And so, as voice technology becomes more and more relevant, and as you're able to do more and more things, using voice, it's going to be really important for brands to build their own presence in that space. And so, you can look at brands like Nike that have had a fantastic track record with, athletes like Michael Jordan, for example, being able to take Michael's voice to make it the voice of Nike, and then to have their customers constantly interacting with that voice, not just to talk about sneakers or athletic wear, but as part of their day-to-day existence, getting up and saying, Michael, play the news, and saying, hey, Michael, I want to listen to jazz, or, being at work and saying, Michael, delete all the spam from my inbox and highlight the most important message. All of those experiences are coming, and, the companies that own that interaction, the companies that build their brands around a celebrity, around something unique like the Intel jingle, around a user experience that might be very different. A great example of that is the work that we did with Jaguar a few years ago, where Jaguar didn't want a vanilla voice assistant. If they were going to move forward with the technology like this, they wanted to not only have the voice be unique to Jaguar, that upper class British style of speech, that Daniel Craig and James Bond use, right? But then also to have an experience that was unique to them. And so to have a voice assistant that responds in a sassy and sarcastic way, the way that, a British, upper class British gentleman would. And so building that experience and making it unique is an opportunity for brands to really deeply engage their customers. And then, of course, to make those customers into better customers where they're selling more product and building brand loyalty.
Yeah. I think one thing that's really interesting you kind of touched on, right, is being for a brand to own the experience regardless of what happens. So whether it is clearing your inbox, right, there are multiple kind of responsibilities that the voice assistant would have. And then having a brand be front and center in all of those interactions, like outside of the kind of space they're meant to play in, right? Nike with shoes, Jaguar with driving, with transportation. Like if you see them in other elements of your life, at the forefront of the first mind. My question is, like, it sounds like you're describing almost like a zero-sum game where Jaguar would own those experiences, but then how does a Nike come into play? Right? I think it's powerful in that it's creating a really strong like fan base. Right? You're a huge Nike fan who wants Nike in all aspects of their life. But what if they also like Jaguar? Like, how do you think about working by multiple brands voice-wise?
Well, I think that the logical place for voice assistants to exist is at the interface between the company and the customer. And so, having, one of the bigger platforms be your touch point. So maybe you have a speaker from Amazon in your kitchen, but being able to pass that voice experience off to a voice assistant that's branded has a lot of power for the brand. And so, in the Jaguar case, it's very likely if you drive a Jaguar that you need repairs frequently, and I'll just leave that right where it is. And so, speaking to your smart speaker and saying, connect me to Jaguar's maintenance folks, or to Jaguar, my car needs maintenance, and then having the smart speaker pass the conversation off to Jaguar's voice assistant, right, where their voice assistant can help you to schedule your maintenance request and will best represent the company. I think that's really where that edge is. But then I think that there's also very much deeper brand experiences. The parallel that I'd love to draw is in American football, where a fan of the Jets, right? I mean, other than watching their team lose constantly, they might have a Jets shirt and a Jets hat and a Jets koozie, and at their office they might have a big Jets poster on the wall. Super fans of brands, number one, represent a lot of revenue for those brands, but number two, they let those brands really represent who they are within their social circle and within their lives. And so the ability of a brand to present a voice experience that does touch smart speakers and your mobile device and your computer and your vehicle really is a huge opportunity that right now the existing platforms don't allow. Right, the existing platforms are they have pulled all of that branding to themselves, and kind of have given some crumbs to the third-party providers. What we're trying to do here at Mycroft is to give those providers the ability to build their own brands, to own that experience with that customer, whether it's through I love Nike as an example because sneakerheads love sneakers, and so when they release a short run pair of shoes, a lot of times a sneakerhead will pay $300-400 for a pair of shoes that might have cost them $25 to $50 to make, and so they've got a lot of margin in there. A fantastic idea from my perspective would be to include a free smart speaker with those speakers, which would drive their cost up a little bit, but it doesn't make it unprofitable. And then to have that smart speaker be a channel by which Nike can access their customers and give them special offers on new sneakers and new athletic wear, to pull them into the Nike Run Club and to help with exercise. I mean, there's just so many pieces that they could facilitate. And right now, they're kind of locked into these other ecosystems. We're working to unlock that experience so that companies can do promotions like that.
Yeah, what you described actually reminds me of what Spotify ran a promotion, I think last year, where they gave a free Google Mini to folks if you were signed up for their family plan. And I would never have gone and bought a Mini myself, but now that I have it for free from Spotify, I use it to play my music, to set my alarm, to make calls, etc. And so I would love your thoughts on, maybe as we think about like penetration, like how where's voice now? Like, is the future you're describing like feasible?
It is. So voice has been the fastest growing segment of the technology market in history. And so voice technology, because the bigger brands were so eager to get market share, has become the fastest growing segment of the technology market ever. It's growing faster than smartphones grew. And if you remember when smartphones originally launched in 2007, I would argue the iPhone was really the first modern smartphone. It went from, only the BlackBerry fiends had them to everyone you knew had them in like 12 months. I mean, it was just a crazy, crazy level of growth. Smart speakers have actually grown faster than that. And, there is a segment of that market, however, that is really inaccessible to the big tech companies because they are engaged in surveillance capitalism. The Google Mini that you got, is a pathway for Google to learn a lot more about you as a user and to further refine their picture of you so that they can sell your data to advertisers and get advertisers to sell you more products, right? And so, when they gave that to you, like, it wasn't that they gave you a product, it's they made you a product, right? And there's a big segment, and it turns out it's almost 20% of the broader market that flat will not have one of these speakers in their home because they don't want to be productized, and because of past behaviors of big tech where they promised privacy and then we found out through news releases and through leaks that it wasn't actually true, that they actually were mining data and they weren't deleting data and they were in some cases keeping all your passwords clear text. I mean, there's just this long litany of privacy violations that make it very hard for the big surveillance capitalism companies to credibly speak about privacy. They can speak about it all day long, but nobody believes them, right? And so, 20% of the market is a big chunk of the market that, would love to use these technologies, but really doesn't have trust in big tech. And that's really where we're looking to grow, right? We've built a reputation by being open and transparent, by speaking about privacy with passion and honesty, for being the smart speaker for people who don't want to be spied on. And that becomes a big opportunity for us. And then, of course, as we build that reputation, being able to lend that reputation to brands that are willing to live by those rules, right? Because, I mean, Nike wants to sell sneakers and sportswear and software and, engage with their customers. They don't want to spy on people. And so, working with somebody like us allows them to access that marketplace without, the risks associated with surveillance capitalism.
If I could jump in here,
yeah.
I see your point about making this a branded experience, and that's why it's better to work with Mycroft, which allows you to own that experience rather than maybe a big tech company that may be taking advantage of your data otherwise. And at Radical, we look into a lot of cutting edge technologies, one of which is voice tech. One of the things that we've been seeing is that the companies that have built this amazing voice experience then needs to find a hardware like a smart speaker or a platform to distribute it. How does this work with Mycroft? Does it need to have a Amazon and so an Alexa skill? I assume it's easier with like someone like Jaguar because then you have your own car, right? But what happens when you want to be in someone's home but you don't necessarily want to give that experience to an Amazon?
Yeah, so we've been working on a reference smart speaker that is certified open hardware, and the idea there is, number one, our developer community and the brands we're working with need something to develop on. Like you said, the other platforms are all closed, and yes, you can buy a Google Mini smart speaker for like $15, but you can't customize it to do anything that you want it to do. And so our company has been working on a reference design called the Mark II. The Mark I was kind of a developer platform, and working to make that available to brands so that they can go ahead and ship a branded experience. And that smart speaker is entirely open end to end, so anybody can have it manufactured. And we're building relationships with manufacturers with the goal of building economies of scale for all of our business customers. And, the idea being that, as we stand up a factory that's building Mark IIs for people who are buying speakers directly from Mycroft, that a company like Target or a company like Walmart can buy from that same factory, get the economies of scale, and deploy that technology without having to do the heavy lift that is building a customized hardware product.
So Josh, we actually have a question from the audience here. What are the most common and most cutting edge use cases you've seen brands deploy?
So the ones that we've been working on lately are mostly related to healthcare. We've recently been engaged by a large hospital system to deploy a COVID proning protocol within hospital rooms. One of the things with COVID patients that are getting extremely ill, you need to change their orientation so that their body can deal with the fluids build up in their respiratory system. And today they're having to have nurses go in and out of hospital rooms to, let the patient know, hey, it's time to turn on your side, it's time to turn on your stomach, sit up, lie down. And every time that happens, that medical worker has to put on their protective equipment and, enter, a potential hot zone of virus. Using voice technology, it's possible to prompt that patient to change their position, and then very importantly, to get confirmation that they've done so without sending a healthcare worker into the room. And, that's the first of what will probably be a deeper engagement in a healthcare setting where, the smart technology can help to manage the room, for example. So turning the TV on and off, listening to music, and then very importantly, calling for help. Right now, the little red button at the side of a hospital bed is how you call the nurses station, and from time to time patients drop that or lose that. The healthcare system we've been working with has had 3 incidents in the last year of somebody getting out of their bed to go and get the call button because they're having an emergency, and then falling and breaking a hip, right? Which is an extremely expensive and extremely painful event for the patient. And so applications of voice in healthcare are really important, and they're working with us because HIPAA requirements here in the United States create a really high privacy barrier for these companies, and these companies are just flat unable to meet those requirements because their business models are so incredibly focused on surveilling their customers. And so the hospital systems and actually a lot of brands come to us having already built something for one of the bigger tech platforms and realizing that they couldn't do something simple like a push notification. Like, I want to reach out and ask the customer something without them first instantiating the skill. Right. The existing platforms don't do that. And so, the kind of the unique features that we're bringing into play, the ability to do push notifications, the ability to keep data private, in some cases to keep data on premises, in hospitality on cruise ships, right? There is no high-speed, low-latency internet link until Elon gets his Starlink thing done. That's not really something that's available right now. So a voice experience in a big cruise ship in all of the rooms, the entire voice assistant needs to live within that cruise ship. And right now, because they're all cloud-based, the other big tech platforms can't do that. And so these are some of the features that we bring into play, to make them available to brands. And we're really happy to be working in the healthcare space, solving an important problem in a novel way.
Yeah. So one of the things you mentioned sometimes is the idea of locking everything in, all the functionality into like a skill, like an Amazon skill. If you're working with a brand, they want to create like a cocktail list, like a virtual or a voice like led bartender or something. It lives within a skill, and it's essentially like a black box. You don't know how it works, and it's hard to kind of work and manipulate. How do you think of it at Mycroft? Is it a skill? Like, can you describe a little more of that kind of the way you structure the functionality?
So we're structuring the functionality as a series of discrete, and skill became the term of art, right? So as a series of discrete applications. However, we give a lot more access to the device, especially if the brand is building it for their own brand. The other thing that we're building and we're very interested in is a discovery process where we as the platform provider aren't putting our thumb on the scale. So one of the problems that the bigger voice platforms have encountered is discovery, right? It's you might have built the most awesome cocktail recipe skill in the world. Like, you might have got Tom Cruise, who made the movie Cocktail, to be the voice of your cocktail skill, right?
Yeah.
But if people don't know that they need to instantiate the Cocktail the movie skill so that they can talk to Tom Cruise, it doesn't matter how much work you did. And, the basic platform really doesn't have visibility into the skills in most cases so that it can activate the proper skill when you act for a cocktail recipe. And importantly, when they do that, I suspect, based on their past behavior, they're going to charge you for the privilege. And so, you might have 8 cocktail skills out there. If you, the cocktail movie Tom Cruise cocktail skill, want to be the default skill for cocktail recipes, my guess is you're going to have to pay the platform to be the preferred skill for that particular capability. And that has 2 problems. One is for the customer, who is getting a response from something that might not be the best response, but it's the one that paid the platform, right? Yeah. And then, of course, from the skill provider perspective, they're going to be charged for accessing their own customers. And we've seen this play out over and over again. The author of the comic strip XKCD had a really great comic about this. Initially when, he had built his own audience, when Facebook launched, he looked at Facebook and said, oh, well, all of my readers are over on Facebook. I should, build a big presence over there. And so he did. And in many brands also did. If you remember back in the day, Facebook would charge the brands to build an audience. So you as the brand would pay Facebook, and they would go access your whole customer list and build an audience for your brand on the Facebook platform. And then one day they were like, you know what? Now that you paid us to build the audience, we're going to charge you to access the audience that you paid us to build. And the brands were left locked out of it with, Facebook, basically printing money as the intermediary between the brand and their customers. The same thing is very likely to happen in voice with, the big tech platforms playing the role of gatekeeper and preventing people's skill, charging brands to access their own customers. What we're looking to do is to build something that's flat, right? And where the brands can own that entire experience. If you shipped a speaker with your Nike shoes to your customers that had Michael Jordan's voice and, Nike's experience on it, you should be able to own that customer. And where we come into play is providing the supporting technology, but then also, creating an environment where Nike as a brand doesn't have to go build their own music player and their own email app and their own, web browser and their own audiobook skill. We provide all of those, either through our core platform or eventually through partners, so that Nike can provide a complete voice assistant experience, focus on what they do really well from a branding and a content perspective, and then allow us as a platform to fill in the rest of the experience so that customers have a great experience.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. So thank you so much for sharing with us the vision of what voice could be for brands. I think it's a perfect kind of segue and maybe to close the time out. Like, as we think, based on what you've seen firsthand, working with brands that are looking to implement a voice strategy, like what advice would you give our audience as we think about this, and then how can they begin a conversation?
So, the advice I'd start with is go out and do some experiments with the existing platforms without looking at their capabilities first. So, sit down with your creative team and say, hey, assuming that we could create, do anything we wanted with voice, what would we do? How would we touch the customer? How would we represent our brand? Would we build a spokesperson based on a real person? Would we build a spokesperson based on a cartoon? In a world where anything was possible, what would we do as a brand with our voice technology, and really create a vision for what the brand wants to be in this space? I'd also encourage people to go watch the movie Her, which is Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson. Not a terrible movie. It certainly points at some of the dystopian potential for the future. But the one thing that movie does extremely well is it envisions what the voice experience will look like in 20 or 30 years. And so, looking at what the the visionaries and the artists in our society have envisioned for the future is a good way to kind of get an idea of what's possible and what's coming down the pipe. And then I'd encourage them to start doing some experiments with the larger platforms and working out, where the pluses and the minuses are. On the plus side, distribution's fantastic. On the minus side, discovery is a significant problem. On the plus side, they provided a bunch of tools. It just works out of the box. On the minus side, the instantiation of the tool is, in many cases, really challenging. Like you have to get 3 commands before you're through to the brand skill. And then finally, to put some resources into their voice experience. Whether they work with us, there are other companies out there that are doing good work in voice. SoundHound is a great company out of Silicon Valley. They're backed by Kleiner Perkins. They've raised a lot of money and they have a pretty cool experience. You've got some other open efforts out there. Jasper came out of MIT Media Lab. Almond came out of Stanford. Go out and play with the platforms and see, what works for your brand and what is indeed possible. And then finally, I think that people need to really radically rethink their thinking about how we are going to interact with technology in the future. We're building a voice experience here, but the voice experience is really a subset of what is really coming. And, the subset is, you're speaking to it, you're speaking in plain English, but, the broader change in technology is that computing will be conversational in the future. And so whether you're typing a command into your computer and asking it, show me the latest sports scores, or speaking to it, there's people working on sign language, being able to sign through a video feed to your computer. The future is very much conversational. And instead of, typing, I don't know if you use, all the Google search foo, right? Where you throw flags and I want it to have this website and has to have this, doesn't have this. That will go away and people will begin using natural language. And so in a future where people can have a conversation with your brand, what do you want your brand to say? People need to be thinking about that because your brand eventually will be able to speak language at the same level as a human being. What does your brand stand for? And how does it talk? And those are things that the brand should be thinking about today because voice and conversational computing is indeed the fastest growing segment of tech. So it's here, it's coming, it's moving very, very fast. And, brands that get ahead of it can really prosper.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh. That was super insightful. Always a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you for your time.
Hey, thank you very much, Leon.
Yeah, so we'll look to connect you with folks who are interested in reaching out and learning more, a little more about Mycroft and kind of starting conversations around.
Cool.
So we'll connect you.
Okay.
Thanks again.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Great. So Sue's running up to close this out.
Yeah. Thank you both for shepherding us through the afternoon and asking some insightful questions. And thank you to whoever is still in Hopin. And thank you to Hopin for working. You did it.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess to wrap up very quickly, it's been an amazing 3 days. I think we've seen some great presentations. We've had some great conversations. We've learned a lot about where things are going and what the future might look like. I hope you all have found this enjoyable and worth your time. And this will not be the last time we do it. So this is the first of our digital dialogues, as we're calling them, and it will not be, again, the last. Expect a few things from us as we close this out. We will be sharing all of the recordings with you once they are available. We'll be sharing the presentations that we've gathered from the startups with you at the same time. We'll also likely share we will share a form that allows you to express interest in being connected with some of these companies. And we will be sharing the market map that Harry, my colleague, introduced on Tuesday all those many days ago. So look forward to that information in the coming days. Thank you again all for participating. If you have any questions for us, you can reach me at Stu, S-T-U, at radicalinsights.com. That's radical, R-A-D-I-C-L-E. And with that, have a great evening, and we'll see y'all soon. Bye-bye.